Wet and cold winter conditions are no doubt where e-bikes really come into their own, because you don't really trudge through the mud like you do on a regular mountain bike. However, the problem is you meet nature's finest grinding paste, mud and sand and grit, and also water, and they create some serious problems with your e-bike. So here is how to get through winter and not trash your e-bike. Recently, Chris would have told you it's a really good idea to protect your bike against cable damage from the cables that rub against the frame. Now, actually using the same concept, you can protect your bike against two very specific things that tend to happen in winter. First up is top tube damage. Now, this tends to happen because you're wearing long trousers or perhaps waterproofs, and they get covered in all the mud, muck, grime, in particular a sandy, gritty stuff. And that will naturally just rub the material off your top tube, and you'll end up with dulling down that paintwork on your really expensive bike. And a real simple solution is just to get yourself a roll of 3M Scotch-Lite tape or something similar to that, like heli tape or whatever, and put some on your top tube. You can't see it when it's on, when you put it on properly. You can use a hairdryer just to apply it and get those bubbles out, and really does make a big difference, especially if you're one of those riders like a mid-ride chat and you kind of sit on the top tube, or maybe your pads will be rubbing on there. It does make a significant difference. And while you're at it, you want to pay attention to your cranks, in particular if you're a flat pedal rider. Because in winter you're going to be riding and you're going to have mud all over your shoes, and being a flat pedal rider, you're going to be moving around on those pedals as you're surfing through the mud and the grime. The result of that, of course, is you're going to be rubbing those crank arms down. And it might not bother you if you've got some silver or polished crank arms, but most e-bikes these days tend to have something like these, just a pair of black ones, and they can look worn out and really knackered in just a few months of riding in winter conditions. So do yourself a favour, get them cleaned up, use some isopropyl alcohol on them to make sure there is no residue or anything that's going to stop heli tape sticking, and just get some heli tape and trim it down. You can of course buy purpose-made kits for this, but it's really good for the wallet if you just get yourself a roll of this stuff. You can get 50mm wide, you can get it on online auction sites and places like Amazon, fairly cheap, and custom trim it. Okay, so let's look at a couple of major drivetrain damage issues that definitely occur more in winter than any other time of the year. Now, of course, e-bikes are significantly different from regular mountain bikes because of the fact that you've got the motor to give you that additional torque, the additional power. That all goes through that transmission, so everything is amplified. Now, first up, I want to talk about the jockey wheels, often known as guide wheels or sometimes pulley wheels. Now, it's a well-known fact that jockey wheels like these, they seem to gunk up around here. And in no way does this correlate to the amount that you ride through mud or the amount that you clean your bike. So this is one of Chris's bikes. He's been away in Finale. It is pretty dusty, to be fair, yet there is a layer of scum and gunk here that looks a bit more akin to a tramp's gum line than what you should be having on a rear mech of a bike. So it's really important to make sure you clear this off. And the reason for that is one or two things is typical to happen. The first one is they're going to gunk up so much that they actually stop rotating. Now, that in itself has an effect. So the first one is the chain will try and roll over those, and what happens then is they turn into little pegs and eventually they'll round off, and they're not doing their job. They're causing additional friction. You're not going to change gear properly, and it causes a whole bunch of other issues, all drivetrain related. The next one is actually the worst option. I've seen this happen several times, a couple of which may or may not be on Jonesy's bike, is when the chain literally just gets chewed up in there. And because you're powering through on an e-bike, you've got that power assistance. Sometimes you're left with a little bit of lag between when you stop pedaling and when the motor is still giving assistance and turning that drivetrain around. If you have that problem, there's almost nothing you can do about it, and it literally will just tear your derailleur straight off the bike, likely snapping the chain in the process. And it becomes a very expensive problem that could have been eradicated just with a screwdriver. So all you need to do is get in there with a screwdriver on both sides of the upper and lower wheels and just get that scum off there. It's horrible stuff. Just clean it off and make sure that those jockey, pulley wheels, whatever you want to call them, are rotating smoothly. They're really easy to take off. Some of the better ones will have bearings in them, and you can replace them, or quite simply you can buy some new ones. The ones that don't just have a simple bush system on there. So you use some dry grease, something like that in there, put them back together, use a bit of thread locker on both the upper and lower bolts because they do rattle loose, and then you're good to go again. The next one is a worn out chain. Now this is one of the things that happens on any bicycle. It's accelerated on a mountain bike and it's almost doubly accelerated on an e-bike because of the sheer amount of torque that you are putting through that. Look how tiny that is, and you think what you can put with your legs combined with a motor system on it. It's quite abnormal what they actually have to deal with. Now you'll often hear a term called chain stretch. Now chains, physically, they do not stretch. It's impossible for those inner and outer links or plates on the chain to actually stretch. Now what tends to happen is that roller wears over time and it can move around, and then effectively the pitch of the chain, the pitch is the actual measurement between the pins themselves, that can change ever so slightly. We're talking fractionally here, but that is enough when you have something that's engineered as precisely as a chainring or a sprocket system on the back, that suddenly the roller, which is designed to sit in a trough in between each of those spiky teeth, suddenly it changes and it's actually going to be pushing perhaps on the front side or perhaps on the back side of one of those teeth. And the result of that is you're going to prematurely wear out your chainring, or more importantly your cassette, which is a lot more expensive than replacing a chain. So everyone should do themselves a favour, get yourself a chain checker. You're talking 10-15 quid, they're not a lot of money. Now there'll be a recommendation on when your chain is showing signs of wear, and there's a recommendation on when it's worn out and you should replace it. Now it takes a bit of time to get used to this, but you should always replace it before it is actually certified as worn, because then it's too late. It will already be wearing parts of your sprockets in the wrong places. Now you might wonder why you want to be doing this, but it's going to save you money in the long run. Transmission will all wear at a single rate, unless you change the chain before that, in which case you're going to get more use, perhaps another chain's worth of use out of your sprocket at the front there, and the same out of the cassette. Don't take a genius to work out, it is going to save you money in the long run. And in particular with an e-bike, you want to be maintaining your whole transmission a lot more than on any other bike, simply because of the amount of torque that you're putting through the system. Do a visual inspection on your chain link. Obviously it's not as easy on an e-bike because you rotate the cranks and nothing moves, so you might need a friend to help you, maybe hit the walk button, something like that, just to get it to spin around. Nice and slowly, a visual reference on every chain link. You're going to make sure you can't see any outer links that's slightly peeling away, because that is where a breakage will occur. So make sure you inspect your chain regularly, clean it. You can clean it, you inspect it at the same time, and put some quality lubricant on there. In winter, of course, you're going to want a wet lube. The reason for that is it's much thicker. It's going to stay on there a lot longer when it's subject to the abuse that you're going to get with water and grit and other stuff. So do yourselves a favour, get yourself good wet lube and get yourself a chain checker. Okay, next up is water damage. Now, obviously riding in winter conditions, you're going to be getting wet. It's fine because mountain bikes like this are designed for that. However, you do need to make sure after you've washed your bike, or even after you've just ridden your bike and you don't want to wash it, you want to make sure that any moisture around key areas, you make sure you get that moisture away. Now the key to that is using a water displacer. There's a whole number of them on the market. Some will be branded up as e-bike specific, but really you just need a quality water displacer that is safe to use around electrics. The common household one to use will be WD-40, and like WD-40, a lot of them on the market, Markov make them for example, they always have a lubricating property to them. Now because of this, you don't want to go gung-ho and just spray them all around your motor and around your drivetrain and that, because lubricant anywhere near braking surfaces, well, it's effectively going to contaminate your brakes. And we're going to make a video on showing you how to decontaminate your pads, but it never completely works. It's only a last resort attempt to do. So what you really want to be doing, if you're going to use a displacer around on your bike, is not spraying a spray directly onto your transmission, because of the obvious proximity to your rear disc rotor or even your front rotor, especially if you're outdoors, because wind is going to carry the mist of that lube around the bike a lot more than you'll ever realise as well. Ideally, spray onto a rag, or if you want to spray directly onto the chain, have a rag behind the chain and spray on at a close proximity so the rag catches some of that. Now, if you do insist on just freestyling it and just spraying everywhere, then you perhaps want to protect your disc rotors a little bit more. So just a plastic bag will do it. Over your disc rotors and over the brake calipers, do it at the front and rear, and you can go a little bit more gung-ho, but still, it's not a guarantee that you're not going to get it near your brakes. Can't emphasize that enough. Okay, so contact cleaning. Obviously, your bike is powered by a whopping great battery, usually kept on or in that down tube. Now, there's a charging point on every e-bike for charging the said battery. Now, of course, they are waterproof, they are designed to deal with these conditions. However, you can still get water sitting and residing around those terminals and the connections, and that is not exactly great, despite how good the battery technology is. So common sense dictates, get yourself an electric contact cleaner and flush these things out. You can use things like water displacing lubricants, but in this case, you really are better off with just a plain contact cleaner. Isopropyl alcohol will also do. There's many different brands on the market. Just make sure there's no standing water, let it dry out. And if you don't actually have any contact cleaner, you can do it with a rag. Alternatively, just open a flap and just let it drain out a bit. That said, if you've got an external battery like this, removing it, taking it indoors and letting it dry out properly, it's a good idea. Now, the head unit on your e-bike, obviously there's different systems out there from Yamaha to Bosch to Brose. They're all kind of different. Some of them have removable head units. It's definitely worth taking them off, giving them a good clean, and actually just take the head unit inside. Let it dry out properly. You're not going to leave your phone in the garage in a puddle of water, are you? So why would you do that on your e-bike? So treat it nicely. Just consider that it is an electrical item, however good that might be in poor conditions. Take it indoors. And the same goes for your mode switches. Now, they completely vary, and the same with on-off switches actually. Completely varies on which brand bike and which system you are using. Some is going to be on the top tube, some's near the battery, some is at the bars. Whatever you're using, they're going to have triggers or buttons. Some of them are more like touch points, in which case they're going to be fine. Others are a bit more like a physical button, so water can get ingested into the system. And although it's rare, they can play up really, so definitely do the same with those. Again, contact cleaner and water displacer are your friends. Although if it's near a pair of handlebar grips like you do see on some of the Specialized bikes, don't use a water displacer because of the fact it's got a lubricant in there. You don't want that anywhere near your handlebar grips. And just the last point actually is something that Chris mentioned in a video earlier on EMBN, is if you take the battery off, it's a good idea to check the terminals and check the contacts on them. It's always good every now and then to take them off and inspect them, whether it's an external battery or an internal battery, because of course you can still get stuff hanging around inside the bottom of your down tube, around the motor casing and stuff like that. Again, just inspect everything and expect your bike actually to go wrong. If you expect it to go wrong, you're going to naturally be looking at things that could cause you problems, and you can actually fix them before they become such. And the last point is, don't be too precious about your bike. You can take some precautions and you can look after it, but it is designed to be thrashed. So get out there and enjoy them. Just look after your steed. Now, if you want to see a couple other winter condition videos, click down here if you want to see Blake and Jonesy over in the South Wales valleys. And in fact, Jonesy riding in questionable footwear there. Foul conditions, that's a great video. And click up here if you want to see Adam Brayton up in the Lake District, again, in absolutely tipping down rain. Really cool video, that one. As always, with all the videos here at EMBN, let us know what you think in the comments underneath. Give us a huge thumbs up, click that subscribe button and hit the bell. Ding, ding.